I took Angel's Trumpet 2 times. I was living in Central Florida where pretty many people have them growing in their yards. The first time was back in 2000. I actually was at school. I was 15 at the time, at a Saturday school for getting in trouble. I had just moved to the area a few months earlier, and someone I had met but didn't know well and went by the nickname of Enoch. I had a cup of coffee with him before we had to go in to do our time. Well, he handed me some, and after I'd taken a few sips, told me there were Angel's Trumpets in it. As I was from a northern state originally, I had never heard of this tropical plant. I thought he was playing a joke on me, so I drank more to make sure there was no strange taste, and to prove I didn't believe him. We went into the school, and I remember the first effects I realized was I was doing some homework, and the words on the page started spinning around. And after that, I don't remember much, only little bits and pieces. There was a police officer there, as is the way they always have it during such activity. I was told I patted him on the head like a dog when he took me outside to talk with me. I remember I couldn't speak, which I have found out now was probably from the side effect of dehydration. My grandmother had to come get me, and she took me mistakenly to her work first, which was a medical center. They told her she had to take me to the hospital immediately. I remember once I was at the hospital, they tried putting a catheter in, and then I flipped out, and they had to put me in 4 points to get the IV in. I remember smoking cigarettes that kept vanishing. I remember talking to someone, I don't remember who it was, for a long time, and they too vanished. The first time wasn't really all that great at all. It was just confusing, and I really disliked it, as I wasn't ready for it. Though I don't think you ever can be, as they say. You really don't believe you're hallucinating. You really believe it's all real. I was no stranger to drugs. I had done my share of acid, shrooms, heroin, weed, coke, etc. Nothing got me ready for the Angel's Trumpet. The hospital had said I was very lucky to not die as my heart was beating so fast, and I guess they said I was allergic to it. I don't believe that. I believe the guy who gave it to me had done it smart, like on the one post, how you should build up your tolerance, he said afterward, that he did it all the time and never went to the hospital. The second time was very different. We were already rolling on ecstasy when me, my BF at the time, and our other friend decided to go and find an angel trumpet bush. We didn't make it into a tea at all. We just ate the leaves, putting rolls in them and chewing and swallowing real quick. To this day, I hate salad. The first thing I noticed that time was all the plants starting to take a purple color and get all furry. That night has haunted me for the past 6 years. Even though I have a husband and 2 daughters, I'm still freaked out. I don't know why it affected me so badly, but it was more than just a trip, I feel like. I really think I left my body. I was flying above the world. We went out to a shroom field, a cow field. We had all laid down in the middle of the road and looked up at the sky. I was flying, and I remember also looking out into the field and seeing 2 young blonde-haired girls waving at me to come back. I think I was out of my body because I was dying. And the funny thing is that years later I had my daughters who looked just like the 2 girls. I have dissociated before on just ecstasy, a lot of it. And I really believe that when that happens, I'm leaving my body because I'm almost dead. I don't remember all that much from that time period, but as dawn approached, one of the people that lived near the field called the police as they saw us wandering around so oddly. The police came and the ambulance, they kept just saying we were incoherent. My BF at the time was okay enough to walk home, yet me and the other friend had to be taken to the hospital. When I was in the hospital, I did the whole smoking non-existent cigarettes thing again. I had also been bitten all over by fire ants. They literally feel like fire. And ever since that night, any time I get bit by one, I feel very strange, almost like a flashback type thing. But anyway, so the cops probably felt bad for me that time as they didn't charge us with anything. I think I forgot to tell you I got charged with ingestion of harmful chemicals the first time I took them. I don't know why it affected me so greatly. I really believe it's called angels trumpeting for my death. I know I've read now that many people can take them and be fine. And I'm happy for them because it's the trip of a lifetime. If you live, if I could do it with a sitter as people recommend, and if I still even did drugs and didn't have a family. Something so spiritual, yet in a way so evil about the entire experience. I'll let you know. The way I always looked at it was like a Garden of Eden type situation. The people I was with that night were named Adam and Lucas. I.e. Adam, Eve, and Lucifer, and the forbidden fruit of knowledge of good and evil. But I think if you're willing to open your eyes to some very strange things, to knowledge that we may not want to have, as I really don't believe I will ever be the same, then go for it and partake of these plants. One of my psychiatrists told me one time that when you do angel's trumpet, the poison actually blacks out a part of your brain. I still have dreams of that twilight time during which I was tripping out in the field. I always wake up with such a strange feeling. I really like the way other people worded it on the one side, how it is like a dream you're awake in, how it's a mixture of your conscious and unconscious coming together, unlike any other type of hallucinogen can do. I really don't believe it is something the younger generation should just mess with as some way to get high. You're stupid too. There are some things that are above us and more than us. I don't believe it's a plant necessarily, but what it can invoke within us. Thanks for letting me share my story. Hope it is of some help. I also find it very intriguing how it seems to be an ongoing phenomena with the Brugmansia and Datura that everyone has tons of imaginary people around them. I don't know if that shows the need in us as a species to be social, especially during a time when our bodies are fighting off a poison that could possibly kill us. I remember quite well people in the hospital being there, then disappearing. And people that weren't really there I'd have conversations with for so long. The cigarette phenomena is pretty interesting too. Everyone seems to have the same experience of smoking imaginary cigarettes the whole time. It's so very frustrating when you keep dropping and not being able to find or pick up these hallucinations too. Maybe it symbolizes that what we're looking for in these trips isn't attainable through this way of trying to get to ourselves. The only way to truly understand yourself and the world and experience it for all it's worth, I believe, is through true experience, daily life, and introspection of yourself. Not the lies of drugs and other forbidden fruit, as others have written in. I don't recommend this drug to anyone. Whatever it is you're trying to find, you can find without it within yourself in this world. Don't die trying to find life. I was on my way to drink at my friend C.S. house with some friends. I took a walk through the botanical gardens, sipping on a bottle of red wine. It was a nice night, and my mind was wandering the astral airwaves, mostly dwelling on my, at the time, obsession with the arcane and the surreal. I'm fairly certain that was a major factor in my decision to pick a couple of blood red angels trumpets on my way. I had no plans to indulge at that point, but for whatever reason, it seemed like a good idea. And my friends. I'm not particularly close to these people. In fact, I wasn't particularly close to anyone at this point. Mostly, we just shared an interest in skateboarding. After an hour or so, we decided to go to a party at another friend's house a few minutes' walk away. I wasn't enjoying this party, but I did the human thing and drunk and smoked and chattered about the real world. At some point, a friend asked if I had any sweet drugs. As a joke, I presented him with my Datura flowers. He responded with a firm thought, and we discussed my hellish experiences with the drug, concluding that I shouldn't do it again. But after a moment of introspection, I said to S, "Hey, S, last trip and munched down the 2 flowers and washed them down with red wine." I didn't place very much emphasis on this decision, but in hindsight, my life was lacking anything to give it structure or meaning, and I felt free to roam the world of chaos. But my memory of the night faded to dreams and confusion at this point, but I believe I sat quietly in a chair. I imagined this to be around midnight, my first coherent memory. Quite oblivious to the fact that I had lost my shoes and pants, I was trying to get into a flat I had lived at about a year ago, about half an hour away from the party. I had imagined my key in my hand, but it wasn't working at all. I soon noticed I had an older man in my company. "That's Olive's house," he told me, so I knocked loudly. A middle-aged lady answered, yelling at me to fuck off. My response was something along the lines of, "Sorry, I thought I lived here," and I wandered off. At this point, I had no idea I was under the influence, and it seemed like a reasonable mistake to make. The man looking for Olive disappearing wasn't particularly disconcerting either. After remembering where I lived, I started heading in that direction. I experienced a frightening hallucination soon after. I was walking past an island on the road. There was a small sign on it, about waist high. In my questionable judgment, this sign was a small one-legged girl holding a sign. I thought it very sweet that someone had found a job for her and started walking towards her. From the other side of the road, as if to mirror me, a dark and seemingly featureless man was walking towards her as well. He reached her before me and proceeded to viciously bind her with some kind of masking tape while she resisted and screamed a muffled cry. The girl had become a street sign. I was convinced he had turned this girl into a street sign in a most inhumane manner. My next memory is reaching C.S. house. I have since been told that this was about 7 a.m. C.S. flatmate D answered the door, waiting for a pack. He then went and got C. I thought it was my package, but it was just me, in fucking hot pants. In C.S. room, he very seriously told me that when we left his place, I still had my pants on. But I was lapsing in and out of believing this was my room, and began leafing through its belongings. Apparently, I was talking very quietly and slowly. He told me later that I asked to borrow his pants, and he said to ask D to borrow his. To this I replied that would be opening a can of worms, and walked off. I'm surprised that in all my fucked upness I could manage an offhand remark like that. D later said that after I left, I stood for like a quarter hour on their doorstep. I remember looking in their window and seeing swirling etheric forms morphing very seamlessly from demon faces to small scenes. I then spent a while trying to get into my bedroom from C.S. house. The walk home was terrifying. I lived almost an hour away and had to deal with the constant realization that I was fucked up, pantless, and totally delusional. I kept finding fingers in the pocket of my hoodie and mistaking the folds in the end of my sleeves for various items. I hoped to God my underwear was real. I also kept imagining my skateboard in my hands and would go to get on it and stumble. Horrifying hallucination, too. I seemed to be in an industrial or Razahidesque area that I did not recognize. I spotted out of the corner of my eye a chubby girl in a McDonald's uniform dancing. She noticed me and stopped suddenly and started walking very slowly before tripping over. She started to scream, so I walked towards her and she started regurgitating a fetus. It sounded very painful. Before I reached her, the familiar featureless bastard emerged from nowhere, stomped the fetus, and gave me a most evil glare. I ran away. I've never been so terrified before or since. For the majority of my walk home, one of my friends tried to show me a dead body he'd found, but I didn't want to hear about it. He gave me a very hurt look as I walked away. I had a 5-second memory and walked around in a lot of circles. Someone mentioned that my attire was creative. I thought he was talking about my hoodie and mentioned how the hood did its job better than most. All the way home, I felt like I was hearing people's thoughts. There were usually a few trains of thought going through their heads at once. I could hear them notice me, then notice my lack of clothes, then decide to avoid my eyes. A few times people's thoughts pointed out things about me that I hadn't noticed, like that I was wearing one sock. Eventually I made it to the botanical gardens and my trip took a turn for the better. I could hear the trees talking, and my hallucinatory friends stuck around long enough to have elaborate discussions. It still seemed to be normal for them to turn into trees, fence posts, etc. when they finished talking to me. I was phasing in and out awareness of the fact that I was hallucinating, but I was always delusional. I thought I was saving face in front of the real people who were going about their mornings by telling my hallucinations that I knew they weren't there. In reality, I was angrily yelling, "Leave me alone." No one. It was raining by this point, and I noticed that the fallen leaves were set up to display intricate scenes. Apparently, the dinosaurs had psychic battles and were all linked up in some kind of morphic field. This eventually killed them when they became competitive with each other within this field, destroying it from the inside. This was a most amazing hallucination that still inspires me with its intricacy. Even now that I realize there was not in fact a hippie sitting there and carefully arranging the leaves, the feeling of amazement that someone had that inhuman level of patience and attention to detail was so powerful that I still draw on it for artistic inspiration. As I was leaving the gardens, my friend tried to say hi to me, but I explained to him that he wasn't real and kept walking. I turned to look at him several times, expecting to see him turn into a rock. But for an unexpectedly long time, he just stared at me with puppy eyes. He did turn into a rock in the end. I was happy to be on the home stretch as I lived about 10 minutes away. I was manifesting objects in my hand to an impressive standard of realism. I heard her say something like, "Bit tired, huh?" I begged her pardon and she said she didn't say anything. I said I must be tired and kept walking. Making it home was a huge relief. I was free to enjoy the visuals in peace, as my flatmates at the time were well used to my antics. As I wandered around the house, it was as if everything I'd ever experienced there was happening at once. I'd walk into the kitchen and find myself in some random conversation I'd had in that part of the kitchen. There were dozens of versions of each of my flatmates, going about days they'd had in the past. Eventually, I went to bed and had a waking life series of vivid and surreal conversations with people I had or had not encountered. I talked to my older brother who died about 3 years earlier. I don't remember what we talked about, just being vaguely aware that he was dead and feeling very awkward about bringing it up. After an incredibly eventful sleep, I spent the next few days cleaning up the mess I made, finding new skate shoes, getting a new phone and card. I'm afraid to ask the cops if anyone handed my jeans in, as my phone was full of dodgy texts. Mostly I spent the next week or so living in a haze. I think I blacked out for about 7 hours and tripped for well over 24 hours. But I didn't feel normal for over a week. To those of you out there interested in exploring this world, I'd recommend doing something to stop yourself going wandering. Oh, I have no way of knowing what happened during my blackout, which makes me feel somewhere between disturbed and frustrated. Some of the more frightening visions stayed with me for months, so you do well to be fairly mentally stable, I guess. Doesn't matter how experienced you are with hallucinogens. As far as I was concerned, the world was behaving strangely around me. For most of the trip, I had no idea I was fucked up, and the moments of clarity were few and far between. The best moments were in my bed exploring my mind, and I'm in two minds about whether it was worth the terror, confusion, and the depression that followed, even for someone like me who, at the time, lived for that. But overall, I think the time spent in terror wasn't any more prominent than the time spent in awe. It was the best of